My biggest message would be take the time, reconnect with yourself, and you'll find in the process of reconnecting with yourself that you become more connected with others again, that you become more connected with the planet again, like you were mentioning with nature, how nature just has a way of delivering everything we need, the knowledge, the health, all of it, the ideas, it's creativity in itself.
Welcome to the Phase 4 podcast, inspired by Vishen Lakhiani and Ajit Nawalkar, co-founders of EverCoach, a division of Vine Valley. In this podcast, we speak to coaches and creatives about where they were, where they are, and where they are going. This is the intersection of what we focus on expands, and your story is your superpower. My guest today is Julie Tunador. She is a life and a business coach, but I really want to say she's a health and hypnosis coach who helps people unleash the power of their superconscious mind. And today she's going to share that and a lot more. And Julie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you accepted my invitation. And I know we've been trying to connect for a while, so this is going to be fun. I always kind of just begin with, just tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you ended up in this space.
Yes. Well, I've been in this space for a long time. It's been, about 20 years now. So a lot of doing my own work and doing a lot of work with other people. And I guess my background is kind of interesting because I think it did lead me to where I am. I started out as a crime scene investigator. So that's what I was doing for many years here in the Los Angeles area. And it really, so many people, when I say I was a crime scene investigator and what I do now, they're like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not related, but it is. I feel like my whole entire career in crime scene was like the training camp for what I'm doing now. It really taught me how to use my intuition. It opened up some really unexpected experiences, and now what I see as gifts that I did not see it that way in the time. And it helped me to see everything from a bird's eye view. When you're looking at a crime scene, you have to be able to literally make a crime scene sketch as if you were, a bird. And so you have to figure out what happened before, where did the person come from? How did this altercation take place? Then what happened in the scene and what happened after. And that's exactly what I find that I'm still doing. So, I started out, it was before the CSI TV shows, before all of the cool things. I have my master's in forensic science. And when I was going to school, there were only 2 programs in the nation. Now I think there's thousands. So, times have certainly changed since I was doing that and in the field, but it was a man's world. And I think this is what it really has sparked a lot of the passion and the impact that I want to have in the world, because law enforcement, again, it's evolving and it's changing. But when I was there, it was very much a man's world, and I was a woman in a man's world. And I was reminded of that very, very frequently. So that was something that I guess it made me strong. You have to have a strong backbone to show up every single day, do a job that is already physically difficult, emotionally difficult. And then at the same time, you're not even in a safe space doing it because there's so many people around you that aren't sure they want you there because you're female or that you belong there. So, it was I didn't even realize how intense what I was doing was until I got out of it. Yeah, so that's kind of my background, about 10 years in crime scene investigation, and then parenthood mainly was the reason I shifted out of that, because of the on-calls, and the shifts are pretty wild, and that's
Work or parenting.
Yeah, right. Right. I don't think when you're one of the only women, they're definitely not as obliging to having kids or an altered schedule. So yeah, it was just the natural evolution of things for me, and a beautiful one. And that's what led me to hypnosis first, to becoming a clinical hypnotherapist. And then that just blew my mind. What is possible when we really tap into the power of the subconscious mind and how much resides there that obviously, hence the word unconscious, is totally unconscious to us. But the driving mechanism of everything that typically we're doing, all of our thoughts, behaviors, everything that is happening on a daily basis. So once I started peeking into that research, there was just no coming back. And I went all the way into it. And then, things have just kind of grown and evolved since then.
Yeah, I love that. I'm surprised to hear that's your intro, because they're like almost feels like it's the opposite worlds. And like when I know you personally, so it's like I just see light. And then, but to carry, there has to be that darkness that was there, and you see it. And I know most coaches are probably empaths, and so you're probably sucking some of that energy in. But hypnosis, I agree, it's life changing, and it's one of those things where once the genie's out of the bottle, there's no getting it back in.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is such a good description of how I feel. I feel like I went from working in the darkness, so I was being a light in the darkness, to now get to being a light in the light. I work with living people now instead of everyone being dead. And, in the career that I was in crime scene, there were, just as, you were speaking about the empath part of it, that was such a huge thing for me. I was already had kind of a spiritual undertow. So it's like I would be working this job wearing a uniform, very much masculine. And then on the weekends, I'd be sneaking away to go to my Reiki certification class, or, to do my spiritual, practices, and starting to get training and certifications, and the worlds couldn't blend. So it's like I had to compartmentalize to deal with the things I would see every day. But then I also had to compartmentalize these parts of me. Like there were parts of me at work and then parts of me outside of work. So I think all of that just gives me a great understanding into so many of the people that I'm working with, and all of the empathic feels. I think that was why I was so good at the crime scene investigator position, because when I would see a victim, I could get a sense just from their facial expression of what had happened to them before they died, of what their last thoughts and feelings were before they passed away. And that helped me to locate the evidence that I needed to find to bring justice and peace to the families. So, that empathic piece, I saw that missing in so many of my coworkers. And I honestly think that is what made me so good at what I was doing.
Yeah, for sure. Ironically, it's that piece is missing from them because of the hierarchy, the male world that they grew up in. They're not allowed to feel, you know what I mean? And we're talking here about the opposite. But hypnosis. So you said Reiki, and you didn't say EFT, but I believe you do EFT and tapping as well, right? And
Yeah.
so I love all of it. And so my whole world changed because of all this. But hypnosis, maybe can you clear up what hypnosis is and what it isn't? Because I think there's a huge misconception sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. I think TV does that for us, the media. It has a way of, people always think of like stage hypnosis, right? Where you come up and they make you look really silly, or they have you do something really stupid, or, but that's not the way it works. Actually, it's the opposite. It's a state of being in a heightened state of control, where all of your senses and even your extra sensory perceptions are awakened, and they're at a heightened state. So you're very calm and very relaxed, but no hypnotist can make anybody do something they wouldn't normally do. So those stage things, maybe they've had a couple drinks, they picked that character that they know is going to have a lot of fun, and that person would have had fun doing those things anyway. So it is not a state of control. And I think the biggest fear or stigma around hypnosis is that it's somehow like a state of being controlled. So I think that is the biggest thing to clear up. It's actually giving people the opportunity to be in control of their own mind, of their own habits, their own patterns, their own behaviors. And that's the beauty of it. And it gets to be relaxing, and it happens so much faster. I mean, as we look at all the research, it takes almost 400 psychotherapy sessions to have a 30% chance of resolving one issue. And then it takes about 72 cognitive behavioral sessions to have about a 60% chance of resolving an issue. And then it takes 6 hypnotherapy sessions to have a 93% chance of solving an issue. So that's what changed my trajectory. I have a degree in psychology, but that wasn't good enough for me. I didn't want to only have a 30% chance of helping someone. So I kept going.
Staggering.
Yeah.
So everyone just rewind that and listen to those numbers. Almost 400 sessions of psychotherapy, 72 sessions of CBT, and they're not even giving you the kind of increase in that you're looking for with 6 hypnotherapy sessions. And then one thing you said inside of that hypnosis answer that I think is important for anyone learning about it, exploring it, going to see a hypnotist. The hypnotist, if they're genuine and real, they're going to tell you that they're not controlling you, that you have full control the whole time and that you can do it, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's a big piece of it. And I think, another part that people don't realize, it's not like you just walk into a room and they drop you on a table or a bed or something and you're out. There's conversation that takes place. And the biggest thing with how we work as humans, we have what's called suggestibility. So how we take in information. And there are really 2 personality types in the way that we take in, but nobody's 100% of either. So we're on a scale of, 60-40, 70-30, 80-20. So a hypnotist should be able to basically test or assess your suggestibility and find out how you take in information and then ask you what you want your mind to be thinking, feeling, doing, experiencing. And then they really are just giving you your own suggestions in the way that you can take them in quickly and easily.
Beautiful. And then there's this one other part about it is that we're trying to replace patterns, behaviors that are not helpful, and we can literally replace them with new ones, sometimes even in as little as 1 session. Is that correct?
Yes, I have. It's pretty miraculous what I've seen. I've actually started to keep track of some of these things because it's pretty unbelievable what can happen in 1 session. And many times we have multiple things going on in our life, but then as you break it down, you realize they're really related to one root thing. So if you can resolve that, kind of foundational root issue, then the other things just start to unravel. And they don't align anymore. They don't make sense anymore. And the majority of what happens in the subconscious is what happens when we're very young, between the ages of 0 and 8, approximately. We're taking everything in, and it's just going into our subconscious mind without any filter. That filter doesn't develop until between 8 and 9. So if you think about all of the things you've taken in, that's typically where the belief systems come from. That's typically where our patterns, our kind of emotional comforts, all of those things. So we just keep seeking to recreate those patterns, even if they're not the patterns that we want to be recreating. We somehow keep finding those relationships or those problems or, those patterns to repeat and repeat.
Because they're familiar?
Because they're familiar, they're comfortable, and most importantly, people are like, so the subconscious is bad. And I'm like, no, the subconscious is always there trying to keep us safe, working with us. But if we've survived from childhood until adulthood, then the subconscious thinks, oh, this is working for me. This is working, this is keeping me safe, so I'm just going to stay in this pattern and just keep this going. So one, for us, it's familiar, it's comfortable, but the subconscious has a purpose behind what it's doing. So really in hypnosis, all you need to do is show the subconscious who you are now versus who you used to be. And that helps to unravel no longer needing that protection mechanism or comfort mechanism or whatever it was that was being recreated. And then you can just put in what you want instead.
Amazing. Now, I looked at your resume, your CV, and you've got so many just for specifically hypnosis, so many different types. I didn't realize there was that many types, but I think I'd like to go in towards health coaching because that seems like one of your bigger areas. And so How does it work for health coaching? Are they similar? Can you pick that apart a little?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's I don't focus as much on health as like holistic well-being. So I think what kind of makes what I do, and this is the feedback I get from the people that I work with, more unique is that as you mentioned, all the certifications and training, I've been doing this for a very long time. It's been 20 years of learning mostly through my own healing and curiosity, but now these are all things that I can offer. So I'm trained in business and strategy and a business consultant. I'm also deeply trained in the subconscious mind and energy and manifestation. I'm also getting my PhD, and I have all this training in consciousness and reality and, the deeper spiritual aspects and everything with life, with mindset, with relationships. So when people come to me, we're not looking at one thing. They're not having to juggle a business coach, a life coach, and a therapist. And they can come and we can work on everything. So for me, it's more about the holistic health and well-being, and they all affect each other. So I don't think you can keep parts of yourself out of a room. You have to be able to come into the room and bring all of the parts of you, and let's look at that. And let's see, if you're doing, some people are fantastic in business, they're very successful, they're very confident, but then in relationships, it's the opposite. They're very uncomfortable. They have a hard time, feeling confident or, good, being seen, being heard. So then if you just take some of the skills from business and in the subconscious mind, you apply those skills to relationships or to speaking or to their personal life, the mind knows how to do that because it's already utilizing those things, but just not in these other departments. So it's just a matter of taking things and shifting them sometimes, or bringing in new ones. But yeah, for me, it has to be kind of the all areas of life to work, to have longevity and sustainability.
Yeah, I agree. It has to be, right? Because otherwise you're unaligned, almost like going into the crime scene and then doing this. And it's like, there is a divide and I want to integrate both instead, which sounds like where you're at. I wonder, do you use what kind of tools do you use? I'm thinking specifically of like Seligman, the VIA character survey to find people's strengths. And what kind of tools would you use?
Yes, I mean, I love assessments. I'm a huge fan, and there's always new ones coming out. So I do use a lot of assessments, but I work with frequency and energy. So I think, we've had the opportunity to play with the Healy device I use from Germany, and that's just one example of many of kind of taking that ancient frequency, which is like sound. It can, people are less scared when you say sound, like sound, baths, anything that is happening through sound, through music, even just how you can put on a song and it shifts your mood immediately, that's all frequency. So there's ways to tap into quantum bioenergetic frequencies, and we all have this blueprint in the quantum field. So if you can heal, if you can change things in the quantum realm, then they just funnel down into your physical being, to your energy, to your mind. And it's a very easy way to shift things. So in the device that I use, it runs analysis. So there's all of this analysis because I'm a researcher. I like science. I like kind of the blend of science and spirituality. And that's exactly what a lot of the tools that I use do. So you get these analysis that come with percentages. You can actually see what's changing and shifting. So we can do the analysis, find out what you need, and then while you're in hypnosis, you're experiencing this quantum shift at the same time. So that's a great, great tool. And then, a lot of other tools, it just depends on the person, but it's always completely different. I love energy psychology. I love tapping. I love things like Psyche. I do a lot of what people call, kind of funky things to help, especially business people, tap into their intuition. The moment you can take somebody who is making high-level business decisions every day, get them connected to their self, their intuition, they can make decisions. They're very effective at decision-making, and they don't look back. They never regret it. It ends up being the best decisions they've made. So I'll use things like pendulums and different things to get them it's like a training to start hearing their own intuition until they don't need the tool anymore to do that.
Yeah, I love it. Is Psyche, is that like brain mapping, brain spotting, where you hold the thing?
It can be, but it's, there are certain techniques that I like to use that it does, like EMDR and like brain spotting and things like that. It uses kind of the sides of the brain. So we know that one side of our brain controls the opposite side of the body, and it's this crisscross. So if you crisscross your entire body at the same time as you're putting your tongue to the roof of your mouth and rolling your eyes, you can imagine your conscious mind just completely disappears. And whatever you're focused on is going straight into the subconscious. So within 2 to 4 minutes, you can experience a real change.
While we focus on experience. I love it.
Yes.
And so I guess that kind of brings us towards where you were and what you're doing. But what are you doing now? I heard you say research 3 times already.
Yes. I love research. I've always been kind of this bridge, I guess, between the science and the spiritual. And I think that started with crime scene, getting my degree in forensic science. There was a lot of science, a lot of chemistry, a lot of sciences in that job. But then I think I used my intuition equally as much as any of the science elements. So that was the beginning of this bridge, I feel like, that started. And then now that I've been doing all of the fun things I've been doing and clearly pulling in a lot of different learnings and resources, I'm in a program right now getting my PhD. I'm about halfway through in what they call integral noetic science. So a lot of people do not know what that means. So I'll break it down. It's basically studying consciousness, reality, psi phenomena, paranormal phenomena, but it's all grounded and based in research. And this is what I think is the most mind-blowing. I've actually been waiting 10 years for this degree to exist. And I remember telling my husband over 15 years ago, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an expert in all these weird areas, right? Having the conversations that people don't normally have or they're not comfortable having. I like to talk about all of those things that people don't normally talk about. And now I can make this accessible to anybody. Somebody working at the IRS, to a business person that has never meditated in their life, because I can ground it in research. So I've been studying things that have brought so much clarity to me in my life, just looking at life beyond life, essentially, is what I like to call it. So understanding the purpose of why we're in this physical existence, what happens when we leave this physical body, and what was the point? What was the point of it all? What is the purpose? Why are we here? What are we doing? And I think some of those questions have gotten answered through research, looking at out-of-body experiencing, near-death experiencing, looking at some of the astral projection research that is taking place. And these are now, even surgeons are writing books on their own near-death experiences. So it's no longer woo-woo anymore. It's like this is in the medical field, the medical research, the scientific research, philosophical, psychological, neuroscience. All of these areas of research are diving into these topics. And there's a reincarnation database that I think it has close to 10,000 cases in it now. And it's incredible. There are people who actually, as very young, like typically 2-3-year-olds, that start, they remember their names, sometimes where they lived, what happened to them, all of these things. And they're so young. It's like a child that young. If you have children, they couldn't make these things up. Not at that age. They just wouldn't have anything to replicate those things from. And the cases that get to go in the database, which are less, that are like officially filed, maybe by now like 5,000, they've actually found the family members of who that person used to be. So they could confirm that they lived this life as this person, and everything they were able to basically find complete evidence of either family members, the address, or whatever the case may be. And so reincarnation has now been proven. And there are thousands of cases that back this up. And these aren't just, a lot of people say, oh, probably in India and, religions that they believe in reincarnation. But no, it's globally. It's in every culture, all over the world. And this actually happened to me. And this is what got me interested in this area. My daughter had this same experience. So when she was, gosh, I don't even know if she was 2 yet, she started speaking very, very early. And one night I was putting her to bed and she just touched my face and she said, "Oh, Mom, I remember when I knew you in the stars." And I just looked at her and I said, "What do you mean the stars?" And she was like, "Well, we both decided, and I knew that this would be the first time that you were acting as my mother and you were going to be taking care of me. Normally I take care of you." And I just asked her to tell me more about this place in the stars and more about this experience and her decision. She chose me. She chose her role because of something she needed to learn, and it was going to benefit me as well. So it's pretty incredible because I had that experience and I thought I was a new mom. It was my first child. Everybody does this, right? Everybody has this. So then I started asking other people, so have your kids ever talked to you about like other lifetimes or, knowing you before they were here? And nobody had had that experience. And so, I documented it the best I could. And then by the time she was 4, she had shared with me multiple lifetimes that she had experienced. And I mean, she would go into full description into fabrics and colors, and she would be on her knees crying and into the emotions of the lifetime and the experience. And there's no way these things could have been made up. And who would have thought then, my daughter just turned 10, that now this is the research that I'm doing. And, so there is a reason she chose me to be her mom. And there is a reason that I'm drawn to this research and to having this kind of impact that I feel the world really needs right now. So it was mind-blowing to me. And that's why I like sharing this research, because these are not woo-woo, out there concepts. These are not just esoteric practices or traditions. There is real science behind this, and there's been a lot of research on all of these things. And when you compare the out-of-body research with the near-death experience research, with the reincarnation research, and then you have all of these scientists and philosophers and even physicists that have been having these out-of-body experiences, and now they're sharing what they're finding in the astral realms as far as purpose. And when everything aligns, I don't think we can disregard this anymore.
Right. How can you? I love the idea of bridging this science and this spirituality, and even just the way like we see these ancient Vedic texts, and now scientists, let's say in America, are proving ancient 5,000-year-old texts, and it's like, oh my gosh. And it's fascinating. For me personally, reincarnation is the best explanation, because there's a lot of different ideas, and some of them, they're hard to grasp. You're not allowed to ask questions. The answers aren't really there. And as you're suggesting now, we have some of the answers that we've been looking for. And so it's almost like we've been, as a society, evolving towards this for such a long time. And then boom, here comes the internet, and now it's a whole different game. One thing I'm noticing from our conversation about you is that you are very good at meeting the client where they're at. And so I think there is a lot of new coaches that listen to this. And I wonder about if you could kind of speak to that, how important it is to meet the client where they're at.
Yes, I think this is something that for some people it's very innate. They're born with this kind of chameleon sense. And for other people, it's more learned, and it can be learned by anybody. But I think it's finding, if I had someone come in who had never meditated in their life and started saying, okay, now you need to have this out-of-body experience to really reach that goal, right? They would walk right out of my door. That wouldn't work. So to me, I think it's just this remembrance that we really are all one. It's really setting this openness and intention. And if there's one thing I think every coach, every doctor, every therapist, every practitioner of any kind should research, it would be looking at things like the placebo effect. So everybody knows placebo, everybody knows nocebo, But what people don't realize is they've done a lot of research on telesebo. And what this means essentially, very simply, is that whatever the intention is that we're holding energetically is what is being created. So to give an easy example of this, if an oncologist, if someone comes in with stage 4 pancreatic cancer and they just think, oh, they're a goner, they're going to be dead within 1 to 3 months. That is very likely, if that patient stays with that doctor, that is very likely the outcome that they will experience, versus coming into an office with an oncologist that is thinking, okay, we have a lot of different experimental things that we're trying. We've seen these cases work out before. Let's just stay open and, let's give the best case scenario. Then that patient, and they've done these studies, it really makes a difference. So I think if we have clients that come in and they have these really big goals or these dreams, these visions for themselves, we need to believe it more than they even believe it. And if we believe it so much that we've already seen it, we've already felt it, we've already experienced it as being true, then there's no way they can fail. So often they're taking their belief based on what we believe, and it's more of an energetic, unspoken thing that's happening in the room. So, to me, that's how we meet the client where they're at. Whatever they come in with, you just start there, you adjust, and then you slowly open them more. It's like, for example, the work I've been doing in Dubai. All of these business leaders I've been working with, what do they want? Profit, success, profit, fulfillment, of course. But it's typically, with business people, money is just, it happens to be the first priority, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when I get in the room, yes, I'm addressing some of those things to help them increase profit and culture and all the things, their systems. But that's what they're wanting. And our job is to deliver what they're needing. So it's really getting into the deeper conversations of how happy are they at home? How are they fulfilled in all of the areas of their life? Because money is certainly not everything. What is their work-life balance? What is their health looking like? What are their energy levels? What is their mindset? Some of these, if we're second generation business owners, founders, we're so often inheriting things, and maybe they're things we never wanted to inherit in the first place, but no one's ever asked, is this something that you want to be doing? No, I want to be playing music, or I want to be a musician. I don't want to be running this business. I'm never wanted to be a CEO, but no one's ever asked these questions. So I think, it comes down to looking at our intention, our beliefs, our energy, and then giving them what they want, but really delivering what they need.
Beautiful. You gave me a nice segue into hypno songwriting.
Yes. Yes. I love to keep things fun. So one of the things that my husband is a musician. So he obviously loves everything music, which is very creative. And we work with a lot of creatives and writers and musicians. So we created this hypno songwriting. As far as I know, I've never seen anything like it, but I think people are doing it in different ways. I think this has existed in ancient civilizations where they would have these ceremonies and rituals, and then the answers come. It's very much the same thing. So we're just creating really depth and going into the subconscious and having a different experience. And then that sparks all the creative juices, and people come out and they write songs and whatever they're working on. If it's a script, a book, a poem, or music, then they have an opportunity to do that. So it's really fun.
Yeah, it's a beautiful idea, right? It's like art therapy, but you getting that frequency you're talking about from the music as well, which for certain people can just totally unlock them and open them up. I don't want to go back, but I do want to go back to telesebo, because I think there's something in there. So is this idea that the oncologist isn't telling the patient, yeah, I think you're going to be done. They're just thinking it?
They're just thinking it.
Because that's their intention. What we focus on expands, it becomes a thing. For me, intention that way is huge. I feel like this, okay? The universe is just wondering what everybody wants. And if you don't tell them, then you just get whatever's left over. But if you do say what you want, it actually helps the universe get it for you, because it just makes it clear. Okay, this is what they want. Let's help them get it. We'll organize their life so that they can get this. And thank you for telling me, because I'm trying to jumble everything else to just pass it out. And now I don't have to pass it out. You told me exactly what you want. So for me, intention, I don't know if I ever shared with you my bias framework, but it's just belief, intention, action, surrender. Those 4 ingredients will get you whatever you want. But is that right with the oncologists? We're trying to, it's what they think can, wow. So it's like telepathy?
Yeah, it's just their thoughts. It's the energy. You know, when you talk about intention, I immediately think of Lynn McTaggart. You know, we were talking about books and different people and all of her work on the power of intention. And I mentored with her for a while, and I still have an intention group that we've been 5 years running now. Same group
Power
for
of
5
8?
years. Yes, yeah, the power of 8 and the power of intention. And that is not new either, right? They identified this in ancient religions a long time ago. They had all these different traditions and people that would pray together. And they found when more people were praying together, the prayers were coming true. And intention is very similar to a prayer. You know, it's pretty much, to me, it's the same thing. So exactly what you're saying. If we have a clear intention, it's very easy for the universe to deliver that. But what's even more powerful is if we have an intention for someone else. I think there's so much in that is yet to be discovered. And that's what's being held in this telesebo. If I have a positive intention for you because I know what your intention is, but I'm really believing it, I'm seeing it, I'm feeling it, to me, it's already done, then I think the universe says, like, okay, we have to deliver this now, because, you know, there are multiple energies going into this already existing. So let's bring it into existence.
Yeah, I love this. I always wonder this about sports. Like, in a weird way, does the winning team, whoever has more intention that they're going to win, not necessarily just intention, elevated emotion attached to it, like, we are going to win. And I'm like, I don't know if it works like that, but I always kind of thought that.
I think I think it's very true in any sport, even if it's a solo sport or a team sport. I think that is such a big piece of it. And it's, you know, it always makes me think about football. There are teams that like have a stigma, you know, where it's like people can be Raiders fans, but then, you know, like it has this darker energy to it, right? So I don't know that if the Raiders are playing another team and someone really doesn't care who wins, sometimes they're rooting for what feels like the more lighter energy team. So there is this whole energetic component, I think, to sports, and the intention plays a big piece of it.
Love it. I'm in Toronto, so we're hockey. We never win, but it's always like, here we go again. And so everybody's feeling this vibration, and it's like, oh, it happened again.
It's like, well, you just created it. Yes, yeah. I'm a Chiefs fan, and the Chiefs have been horrible for so many years. My entire lifetime, I don't think they ever made a championship game until recently.
Now they're awesome, right?
Yes.
I saw a stat when I was younger that Kansas City in November and December at home were like 82% or something. It was nuts. But anyway, I definitely digress. I would love to ask you a few more questions. One of them is, this is the Phase 4 podcast, and Phase 4 in the 6-phase meditation by Vishen Lakhiani is all about creating your future 3 years from now. So where is Julie 3 years from today?
Yes, on a personal celebration level, finished with my dissertation and done with my PhD program, which really means, you know, the big goal of that for me is just bringing this through speaking, through writing, through allowing people to experience. 3 years from now, I hope that I'm working with even more business leaders all over the globe. I hope that I'm working with government officials all over the globe. And, you know, I plan in those 3 years to have gotten closer. My goal has been to impact positively 1 million lives or more. So I'm hoping that things just seem to be accelerating. So I would love to hit that number 3 years from now.
That's awesome. And then it goes back to the intention, right? You send it out, your brain has a target to reach for. I love it. I love it. I love it. And so what kind of things, you said Dubai, the retreat, what kind of things are you working on now? How can people kind of reach you, and what are you offering?
Yes. I like to play. So I have different groups. I have for the coaches and the entrepreneurs, I hold this group that very often, I think what I found, I create what I wish existed. And doing this work, being an entrepreneur, I talk to entrepreneurs that are not even in our field, and it's such a lonely endeavor. We're not going to the office. We're not having the same companionship. There's not a whole lot of support for entrepreneurs. And often we're giving and serving and giving, and then it just starts to kind of empty us if we're not very careful and aware and refilling our own cup. So I've created an enlightened circle community basically for entrepreneurs, a lot of coaches. We elevate each other. It's great to have a network, a referral system, and just to help each other with our challenges, very authentic, very vulnerably, just admitting that everything is not perfect all the time in life and business, and getting the support, filling up our own cups so that we can serve better. And that's one of my passion projects and something that I knew I needed. So if I just said, okay, let's create it. And then I have a past life regression program that's going to be starting, I guess that's the beginning of November. And that's going to be really fun. It's 6 weeks of just getting to experience other lifetimes and really working kind of with the out-of-body experience, getting in touch with your soul's journey and what all has potentially led to where you are now. So that is a very fun program. And then I have my hypno-songwriting coming up, and people are just welcome if they want to reach out or follow me on any of the channels. It's just my name, Julie Tunador. And I'm always posting the new things that I'm sharing and doing. And I do a lot of workshops around the things that I'm learning. So a lot of this research on plant and animal consciousness, a lot of the research on astral projection. So I tend to do these pop-up workshops on whatever I'm researching at the moment and letting people experience what I'm experiencing.
I love it. I think that plant and animal consciousness, that's a good one, because the plants are definitely listening and the research and the proof is there already. And then animals, I got dogs, and if anybody has a dog, like the dog, you don't have to speak to each other. You know exactly what you're thinking. And man, dogs are awesome. But yeah, that's a good one. What is there something specific about that interests you or that called you towards it?
Yes, I think it just, we can't always look at ourselves as the supreme consciousness. We cannot survive without plants. They would be better off without us. So we need to start really letting ourselves come down from this pedestal of superiority and understanding the consciousness that is there. Plants are medicine. They are extremely, extremely intelligent, intuitive. We have 5 senses. They have over 15 senses. They can learn, they have emotions, they can feel, different plants, they all communicate with each other, so they don't just stick to their own. If there's a predator eating part of a plant, they'll tell every plant around them so that plant can let out a smell that scares that predator away. They're very protective, they're very intelligent, they're very intuitive, and I honestly think that we can learn more from plants than anything else. So if anyone, the book Brilliant Green, it's an incredible, incredible book. It's very short, easy read, but it really tunes you in a short, succinct way to the consciousness of plants. So I highly recommend that for anybody that wants their mind blown and to realize that even meditating with a plant, you will take on the properties of that plant, because that's how they work. You can put a plant next to a chemical waste plant. They will learn how to not only survive, but part of their adaptive mechanism is to clean the environment around them. So if you have a negative mindset and you sit down next to a plant and just say, let me be the peace that you are, you'll immediately be overcome with peace. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, intention again, right? That is fascinating. I definitely connect. I have one of my mantras, I got lots, but one of them is, or maybe it's affirmation, is that the answers come to me in nature. And so I'm telling you, man, when I go for a walk or a run, the best information comes to me. And it's just like, I'm sometimes literally yelled out, thank you. And it's just like pure downloads. But I think it's because of that intention where it's just like, I'm saying this all the time, I'm believing it. And it kind of goes right back to the beginning with hypnosis. So before I ask my final question is, what would someone, if they're interested in hypnosis, interested in this conversation, how would they get started?
Yes, I would say try it. So many people are nervous for some, that's the number one thing I get. People are nervous, they're scared, they don't want to be controlled. But it's something that can only be explained so much in words. You just have to experience it. So my encouragement would be whoever it is, wherever you are, find somebody and experience it. It's a very incredible way to just reconnect to yourself, to really get in touch with who you are and to start accessing the most powerful parts of you so that things can just be easier and can happen faster. This life is not meant to be hard. That's the programming that has been beaten into so many of us through childhood and society. But it's really not meant to be that way. We have a purpose, a soul plan, and that's what we're meant to be doing. And it should be easy because this purpose and this plan is often better for the greater good. So just remind yourself that if you're on your path, it shouldn't be this hard. And if it is hard, the subconscious is the best way to shift that.
Thank you. That's another mantra, is that life is fun and easy. And then it appears that it is fun and easy for the most part. I think saying like, try it out. I have that written down here in my notes, try it out. And the reason is because then you don't have to believe Julie or me. You have the evidence in your own life of like, oh my God, this works. There was a time where I wouldn't even talk about this stuff because everyone, actually, they still think I'm crazy, but I don't even care anymore because I'm the creator and I have the evidence. And it doesn't matter what anyone says or a YouTube video or whatever. I have the evidence in my own life of this. So try it out. Definitely agree with you there. And then I guess my final question, you kind of answered it, is how can people reach you?
Yes, I would say the best way to reach me is either through my website, julietunador.com, any on the social channels at Julie Tunador. Yes, so any of those ways, please feel free, whether you're just looking for a space to play in or information.
Is there anything that I didn't cover that you'd like to cover? Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest thing is just, the one message I don't feel like I brought through enough, and I just kind of got an intuitive hit that this needs to be brought forward, is now is the time of reconnecting. And I think, that is the strongest thing as soon as you asked that just popped in, that it needed to come through. So many of us, just through the societal norms, through everything, the intensities, even the pandemic for some people, we've become very disconnected from ourselves. If you look back at indigenous, ways of living and being, they have actually identified, with colonization, that was the time that we started disconnecting from ourselves. So there's been this call to reconnect. And I think the more we can reconnect with ourselves, that's where everything starts. That's where the shifts come from. That's where the real impact, the real success, the real health, the real wealth, that's where everything is stemming from. And it's not selfish. So often I hear people say, well, I can't take time for me because I'm a mom or because I'm this or that, but it's the opposite. So I guess my biggest message would be take the time, reconnect with yourself, and you'll find in the process of reconnecting with yourself that you become more connected with others again, that you become more connected with the planet again, like you were mentioning with nature, how nature just has a way of delivering everything we need, the knowledge, the health, all of it, the ideas, it's creativity in itself. So I guess, that is the biggest thing, finding any way that you can reconnect with yourself, and that's different for everybody. So whatever that means to you, that would be the biggest thing I think all of us should be doing right now.
Amazing. Julia, I'm so grateful for your time today. Thank you so much. This was amazing.
This was so fun. Thank you for having me.